Thanks very much. Internet being down may be my one shot at getting your attention for the next 15 minutes. That's great, but let me set a few expectations just very quickly. IMM, we're a full-service digital agency out of Boulder, Colorado. Great place to live and work, by the way, if you're looking for an agency to work with. Fortune 500 clients. I oversee all of client partnerships and paid media. So this presentation is going to be almost all steak and no sizzle. I am not going to read bullet points. Everyone here can read. But we're going to talk about programmatic video, which is moving faster than we can keep up with right now. So, challenges and opportunities. What are the topics we're going to cover? Growth is incredibly robust right now in video, both desktop and mobile. If it's so robust, why aren't we all in? I mean, why isn't all of our budget going there? We're going to be touching on that. What are the big challenges around buying video in a programmatic fashion? In other words, why do I have to give my ad ops team that traffics video assets a little bit of Macallan in their coffee mugs about once a day to get them through the day? We're going to talk about the big opportunities where certainly as an agency we're seeing great opportunities and our brands are having great success in video. Some misconceptions, and then of course who should be buying. So, a couple of things. Is video really blowing up? Well, according to our friends at Business Intelligence, it is. There's the big spike that we talked about a moment ago from last holiday. You know, 35 billion views in the month. It is an incredibly fast-growing medium. People consume video like no other medium. If you're not paying attention to video today, you're at least one step behind. One of the challenges, certainly, is that the technology that underpins the trafficking of video in programmatic and other areas is really controlled by 10 big players. Now, I apologize, this graph is 11 months old. It doesn't even show BrightRoll being consumed by YouTube. Therefore, it probably should be carbon dated in our industry. It's that old if I don't have YouTube up there. One of the things that I have to disagree with some folks here, we're talking a lot about scarcity of video inventory. That's not what we're finding, honestly, as an agency. Now, if we have demand going up, consumers consuming it more and more every day on every device they have, and a scarcity of inventory, I would expect CPMs to go up. Across the board, in that 6-month period right there, they drop by 2%. Now, you can look at the Tier 1, and you can say, well, Tier 1's going up. We define Tier 1 really as what are you getting for your money? I don't want name recognition. I don't want brand recognition. I want consumers who are going to hit that site and do what I want on that site. To me, that's what defines Tier 1. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people coming in on the long tail and providing more and more and more inventory. The inventory is out there. Your agency should be digging for it. Here's the big pop in private marketplace. So going directly to the brands, getting inventory directly from them. Thrilled to see private marketplace coming in. I think it's one of the 3 key areas. I'm not one of the people that believes that open exchange, private marketplace, any of those things are the silver bullet. It's got to be a nice mix of the group, and we'll touch on that in a moment. So predictions. We've all heard the numbers. Market's going to be huge. Everything I've heard 15 billion, I've heard 19 billion, I've heard 17 billion. It's kind of all over the place. The bottom line is video is increasing dramatically. Programmatic spend is increasing at every channel. If we take a look at this for a 6-month period in 2014, here's what agencies said how they were increasing their programmatic spends. Display, mobile, and video are the ones that have my attention because they're north of 50%. If I jump all the way over to the right and look at programmatic TV, I think that number got put in there by the folks at ABC. With that said, we're very much focused on video and mobile at this point. So, why aren't we selling the farm, mortgaging the house, and going all in on video at this point? Because there are a lot of challenges, really serious ones. With all due respect to my friends at IAB, who I think do a terrific job, going in, sitting with a client and explaining that was a viewable impression when 50% of the pixels were in view for 2 seconds, sorry, it doesn't fly. It really doesn't. We have to talk about completion rates. We have to talk about click-through to site. We have to talk about low bounce. I can sometimes get a client to sort of close one eye and squint the other and believe that the 50% of pixels in view for 2 seconds is a viewable one, but then the folks from procurement, accounting, and finance walk in, and now they're talking about clawbacks and make goods. All right, so this definition doesn't help. Lack of insight into page placement on video, on the video unit itself. I would really encourage all of our friends out there in the publishing and the platform world, give us more insight into where that video is running on the page. I will pay higher CPMs if I know where that video is running. Right now we have very little insight. This point is not talking about viewability. Straight up bot-driven fraud, no questions asked, it is still a problem, and it is a big challenge to track it in the video world. We're just now getting on top of it in the display world. But if you are anything like our agency, or if you're doing this in-house as a brand, you've got desktop, you've got mobile, then you've got, you've got desktop, mobile, and then you've got display, you've got video, and you've got in-app video. 6 squares. These days, to stay on top of fraud issues, you need 6 different tools to stay on top. Who's paying for it? The client doesn't want to pay for it. They don't consider those working dollars. So that's something you have to get ahead of. We just hired, by the way, a VP of viewability. We had 6 people going around working on this. It is an important enough issue that it is now a VP level, executive committee level position within our agency. Pre-bid filtering tools, integral ad science, Peer 39, variety of things like that. They're useful. We found them to be inconsistent. Again, these are some of our challenges. The MRC certified tools. Yes, MRC certifies a tool that it will behave the way that they said it would behave. If you're an agency or a brand and you've done what we've done, which is put 3 tools on top of the same inventory to see what those reports say, you're going to see this. Clients don't like seeing that. Media auditors don't like seeing that. It's very challenging. We'd really like to see those reports start to say something similar, plus or minus 10%. And frankly, once you start talking about mobile on video, now you're in the Wild West, okay? But it's a very exciting Wild West. It's an area I encourage people to get into in spite of all the bullets that are flying out there. So what's a digital professional supposed to do? All right, so personally, our team, our brands we work with, we don't talk CPMs, clicks, and horror of horrors, we do not talk tiers, all right? We don't talk tiers because we're out there buying audiences. And if our audience is an underbanked subprime audience with a high engagement level, with all due respect to our friend from Turner who was up here earlier, Turner's probably not the right place for that audience. We're going to find another place that is the right. So we don't look at tiers. We look strictly at consumer engagement, and we will pay for consumer engagement. So we look at those downstream KPIs. As a brand, if you are not holding your agency's feet to the fire on downstream KPIs, getting into the site, taking site-based actions, then you are not, frankly, beating your agency up enough. And I say this as a guy who's got scars and all kinds of calluses from getting beat up by my brands all day long. So we're all interested, we as an agency right now, we want to talk about completed views. That's the kind of insights we need from our publishing partners and the platforms. Sending them to sites with low bounce rates. The brands are the only ones who can help us do that. The agencies, the brands, developing microsites and landing pages that have low bounce rates, and then a completed consumer action. When we can measure those 3 things, now we know how to bid. I'm not going to bid on CPMs because now I can take those things and I can back out into an effective CPM and an effective CPA. Getting caught up in clicks, click-through rates, CPMs, I think it's a red herring. We found that time and again internally. And by the way, 2/3 of all the media dollars that our agency has in the market on any given day is our money. We work 2/3 on a performance basis, get paid on a CPA. So if I'm floating $5, $6, $7 million of my partner's money out there, it's not my client's money, it's the guy who sits 12 feet away from me and owns the agency. So we take this very seriously. Is the current period of this current period of consolidation bringing an end to innovation? God, I really hope not. The recent acquisition by Brightroll from Yahoo, that made the news. A lot of the big players are being bought up. But as we've talked about before, there is so much work to do to still make video effective. And what I really think is I think that the platforms and the small companies that are going to come along and add a tremendous amount of value at this point are the ones who can stitch it together. Make it easy for my ad ops people and my buyers to get out there and buy it and measure it and take real measurements back to our brands and tell them exactly what they're getting for their money. Why am I throwing this just stock shot up here? How many folks here are frustrated that creative is getting left behind in the discussion around programmatic? I know at least one or two people. All right, very few hands, couple of hands. I think video is one of the most exciting mediums for people in creative. I really do. We have a very robust creative team, and they love shooting video because the editors become the heroes. They can cut it down for almost any size. They can cut it down for almost any length. They can do it quickly. It's easy to do messaging. Creatives love to do video. The trick is your agency media team working through strategy and back to creative to iterate time and again? There is no reason for creative to get left behind. If creative is getting left behind, it's because of the way your agency has structured itself. So, all the hard things about video, but what are the great opportunities? All right, Forrester likes to define kind of 4 big flavors of programmatic. I love the proto-programmatic. Every time I hear that phrase, I think of the fish kind of crawling out of the ocean, the primordial ooze for the first time. But the other ones, we all know what they are at this point. We're in the 3rd day of this session. If you can't define programmatic, direct, private, and open, plus all the different phrases that go along with those, then you haven't been paying attention because the internet's been functional. Yet, I have read dozens and dozens of articles talking about the right way to do programmatic. From our experience, there isn't a silver bullet. There really isn't. You know, with the exception of Proto, work each of these channels. Get in on some of the guaranteed buys. Get in on some of the direct buys. Open Exchange is a great place to mine for new audience segments. We're going to touch on that in just a moment. It's often a very cost-effective way to look for new consumers that your planners and your brands don't even know about. So mix these up, you know. Try new things. Don't get suckered into there is one way to do this, there's one way to buy, and it's this marketplace right here. With all due respect, there are a lot of marketplaces. It's not time to get married. So, with consumer interaction infrastructure, video RTB is seeing huge growth. Again, we touched on this earlier. Nearly 25% of online video advertising. Big numbers. Projections are that mobile RTB, just RTB, not all programmatic, just real-time bidding, will be 45% of all mobile ad buys by the end of this year. So, again, if you're not paying careful attention, if your agency's not paying careful attention, this train has left the station. It's moving very, very quickly, but it's not too late. So other opportunities I think people should keep their eyes open for. Tablets, smartphones, no great surprise. I am always careful to refer to a focus group of 1. And for this focus group of 1 right here, I consume very little video at the office. Primarily, I read articles. I don't like to play videos at my desk. But when I'm home, tablet, phone, it's video all day, all the time. So what's the setting? What's the device? When should you be creating videos for what environment and for what device? So this is something to keep a very careful eye on. The other one is really over-the-top television. Streaming devices, right now it's just 2%, but the announcements that we've seen from HBO, from Roku, from CBS, there's going to be so much more content coming out on over-the-top. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to test programmatic video in these channels. I don't think anyone here can envision a time anytime soon when linear TV falls into this, but there's certainly going to be some interesting television opportunities in terms of video on demand. Other great opportunities, under-optimize. Yes, I actually said that. You know, if any of my brands are here, I don't think they are, they'd throw a rock at me. We try and under-optimize by about 10%, okay? And we've consistently seen that once you get to 90% optimization, you're no longer finding new audiences. So it's usually on the Open Exchange in video that we use 10% of our budget to look for new audiences, all right? You know, where's that nugget? And when our programmatic people are sitting next to our paid search people, and they're sitting next to our paid social people, then all of a sudden we can test those new nuggets in a couple of hours. So don't over-optimize. I love our planners. They're great. Most of our brands are positive. They know exactly what their audience segments are, but they're changing all the time. So who should be buying? I'm actually going to step into this for a minute. I'm not going to go into the should it be the brand or should it be the agency. I'm actually going to go into, if you leave it with your agency, what should your agency be doing? All right. If as a brand you're already buying run of network, paid search, display programmatic, if you're doing data segmentation, audience segmentation on CRM, you know what? It makes an enormous amount of sense for you to truly have this in-house. Because not only do you have the programmatic data that all brands not only want but deserve, you can actually combine it with the data from all these other media channels, and now you've got a real DMP style picture, which is really what you need. I highly recommend that all this information be fed through a fractional attribution tool. We happen to use VIQ. There's some other great ones out there, but it gives us great insight when we're spending at a brand and awareness and even consideration level, how much of that drops to the end of the consumer journey. I was going to say funnel, but I'll say the end of the consumer journey, and what sort of halo effect our DR buys have when it comes to the branding and awareness up at the top. So, how thoroughly have you vetted your agency? When you talk about bringing it in-house, or you talk about leaving it with your agency, have you actually met the programmatic teams? And I'm not talking about the ad tech firm that manages the account on behalf of your agency, not managed service, but self-service. Have you gone and met the people who are pulling the levers every single day at the agency? You should. Are they sitting next to the planners, the paid search people, the network buyers, the segmentation guys? They should be. Are they sitting near the strategist? Our folks sit about 18 feet away from the strategy folks, because every time they find a new audience nugget, they chuck it over to strategy. Strategy writes a brief. They send it to creative. Comes back down again. That's the way your agency should be working. And finally, I'll say this again. Is the data going back into a fractional attribution tool so you really understand what your effective CPMs and your effective CPAs are so that you can bid properly? If your agency, if as a client, you're not holding them to hard and fast quantifiable KPIs that are much further downstream around consumer engagement, you need to be. Now, if your agency is able to answer yes to all of these things, and provide you with the data so that you can be running a DPM effectively, I don't see a reason to bring it in-house. If your agency isn't doing these things, fire them. Find a new agency. There are great agencies out there. So I'm going to leave you with 3 things. You're not too late to programmatic video. There are seismic shifts happening right now in all the flavors. Viewability, placement, and fraud are big. Your agency or your team needs to be on top of it and needs to have a strategy. And finally, regardless of what vendors say, there is no silver bullet. This takes a lot of work, working with a lot of vendors to test it out. So thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we do not have enough time for any questions, but I really appreciate it, Jeremy. Thank you very much.
Sorry for going over.
It's okay. No, thank you. I appreciate it.